to the Travelogue Podcast on Travelogue.media.
Bem-vindo. Bienvenida.
Bienvenue.
Welcome back, adventure friends. This is the Season 3 finale of the Travelogue Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Clarl, podcasting from the U.S. Virgin Islands. This week, my special guest is Maeve McGuinness.
Guatemala stole a piece of my heart. It was a really beautiful place, and I'm excited to go back and explore more.
This summer, Maeve traveled to Quetzaltenango, Guatemala, also known as Xela. She spent a month there studying Spanish, and I had a chance to speak with her via Skype. Stay tuned. First of all, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So you were in Guatemala. When was it? Sorry, remind me when it was again.
Yeah, it was this summer, so I went mid-June to mid-July. I wanted to travel, and I wanted to learn Spanish. So I really just started kind of doing some research on schools and asking around from friends, different places that they'd gone. I got recommendations for Nicaragua, for Guatemala, for Mexico. And I just kind of landed on Guatemala, and specifically the town Quezaltenango, which is also known by the locals as Xela. So I found a school down there and emailed them, and that's kind of how that started.
What was the deciding factor about Guatemala?
A lot of friends had really loved it. The feedback I got about Nicaragua was that it was big for surfing, and surfing is not my thing. And it looked doable in terms of, financially doable. And I think just the recommendations, everybody seemed to just really love it, and a lot of people had gone to this specific town, Quetzaltenango, Xela.
Do you want to talk a little bit about you stayed with a family there? Do you want to talk a little bit about how that went?
Yeah, so most of the schools I think kind of offer the same deal. You can either stay with a family and do a homestay, or kind of figure something out on your own, and I decided to stay with a family. I was with them for the whole month. They were just really, really wonderful people, very caring and kind, and so I got to kind of practice my Spanish more, sitting and having breakfast and lunch and dinner with the family, and they always those 3 meals were provided every day with the family. There was a mom, a dad, and then 2 kids who were not really kids so much anymore. The daughter's in college, and the son was in high school. And I loved it. And there were other students staying there. It was a great experience. I would recommend homestays to other people who do a similar trip.
So you were there learning Spanish. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, I guess there's a lot of, people can learn Spanish in a classroom, and when they go travel and actually interact with people where they're going, they sort of, they run up against certain things. But what was your can you talk about maybe the advantages of learning Spanish in the place you're traveling, and what that's like?
Yeah. So I had studied Spanish in high school and in undergrad and college, but I hadn't really spoken it much or even studied it much before going I think I could barely convey a sentence. I think I got where I needed to go kind of by luck, and having things arranged ahead of time. But the classes were one-on-one, and most of the schools, I believe, are set up that way. I don't think they're really classes. I think it's just one-on-one instruction, Monday through Friday in the morning. My classes were 4 hours a day. Some people were doing 5 hours a day. That just seemed like a bit much to me. But it's really catered then to where you are in terms of your level. And it's a lot of dialogue and discussion mixed in with grammar. So that was really helpful. And then also being able to speak with my family was really helpful. I will say that I probably didn't learn as much Spanish as I maybe thought I would, because there was a ton of English being spoken in the town of Xela. So it was kind of like being inundated with Spanish, and then my evenings were kind of done in English a lot of times. But you can make the choice not to speak English, and people would speak with you in Spanish. So,
did you have much opportunity to just explore the town on your own or with other students?
Yeah. So I went down there by myself. I didn't go with anybody. I didn't go with a group. But it's really easy to get connected in with other people, with other travelers, or to meet locals. And then, like I said, there were other students staying in the same home that I was staying in. So people take you under their wing, and they start showing you around, and then you can kind of do your own exploring once you feel a little bit more grounded and have a better sense of direction in the town or city. A month was not enough time. I had planned on going to all these different places in Guatemala and doing all these different things, and it didn't happen in a month, which is part of the reason I so badly want to go back at the end of next May.
You're listening to the Travelogue Podcast. If you enjoy listening to this podcast without ads, please consider making a donation. Visit paypal.me/jskmedia. You can also support this podcast by leaving a 5-star review on iTunes and participating in the audience survey. Your feedback is very important. You can leave comments on each episode post or send email to podcast@travelogue.media. Thanks for listening. When did you really feel like you were traveling? Was there a particular moment, or was it just as soon as the plane landed?
Yeah, I think there were several moments. Definitely when you land. Just the airport itself, it was like I was very clearly in a different country, and then you kind of walk out of the airport, and it's just kind of like hordes of people all yelling at you in a language you don't really understand, trying to get you to like take their taxi service here or take their shuttle service here. And so it was very like overwhelming at first. And then just there are like different cultural things that kind of happen throughout that really make you kind of aware that you're in a different place, in a different country, and experiencing a different culture. I really loved the chicken buses, which are not just in Guatemala, but they are absolutely an experience. I had a Guatemalan woman fall asleep on me on a chicken bus. It's just, how they're kind of climbing up on top and throwing bags, and it was like a great experience. I love the chicken buses.
What would you say to someone who's maybe considering a similar trip? but maybe he's not sure if it's worth the money, or they're just not sure it's worth it.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I would say travel is always worth the money. And to do it and go. Because there's just so much that you can get out of it, and on so many different levels. And Guatemala was a beautiful, beautiful place. Everybody I encountered was very kind, which isn't to say that there aren't risks involved, but I also think that sometimes the media kind of plays up the violence and plays up it being a dangerous place, and that was not my experience of it. So I guess to answer your question, my advice to anybody wondering if it's worth it the answer is yes, it is worth it.
All right. Well, we'll have to have you back on the show to talk about your future travels.
Sounds good. I'd love to.
Great. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
If you'd like to respond to anything related to this podcast, you can call into the show at 303-731-6104 or email podcast@travelogue.media. I just want to give you a heads up that my site travelogue.media may be migrating soon to another hosting situation. That means the email I just mentioned may change. If and when that happens, you'll be the first to know. But don't worry, you'll still be able to contact me through the phone number. Once again, the call-in number is 303-731-6104. This concludes Season 3 of the Travelogue Podcast. Thanks for listening. Hasta la victoria siempre. Walk tall, live free. Thanks for listening to the Travelogue Podcast. Subscribe on iTunes, Android, Google Play, or your favorite podcast application. You can support this podcast by completing the audience survey, rating on iTunes, and by making a donation. Visit paypal.me/JSKmedia. Your comments, likes, and shares on social media are always appreciated. Send email to podcast@travelogue.media.